I'd like to welcome back a very popular guest that we did, I think it was session 7 actually, with Stephanie Weager, who is a well-known astrologer, author, fragrance maker, candle maker, Airbnb host. Multi-talented, but it certainly was a very successful podcast. Was very well listened to, even though we had some outtakes on there that didn't quite come out of the recording. But there's been requests for Stephanie to come back again, and we thought it's very timely astrologically for her to jump on and do a recording, because in the planetary aspects, there's a lot going on. I'm sure you'll agree with that, Stephanie, with hurricane,
Yes.
and there's what's called a grand trine right now. So Stephanie's going to come on and talk a little bit about that. And we can also maybe explore how planetary shifts, how planets moving into certain houses can affect us, can affect our lives, can affect our relationships, and can shift us. So I'd like to welcome to the show Stephanie Weager.
Oh, thank you, Deb. Well, it's lovely to be invited back. And thank you for the listeners who messaged you and messaged me asking for, more. So that's lovely. And it's funny how both you and I thought the same this week, that this would be a good time. I think we more or less contact each other simultaneously, which is obviously fate. So last time we talked a lot about, relationships and how it affected our relationships. So I'm still going to have that theme, but I'm going to take it on a bit further and explain, because I think the feedback I had, and even on a daily basis when I write horoscopes, the feedback often is, can I, embellish it a bit more? Can I explain? So the universe is a very, very large place, as we know. And planet Earth is very small in comparison to the universe. We are all human beings living on planet Earth. The Western world in particular, we are very obsessed really with our relationships, our daily lives. Lots of things going on in the universe right now. The world is a bit unsettled, unfortunately. I get asked that question daily, and I will talk about that a little bit in a minute. But on a very personal level, our homes, our lives, our jobs, our families, our relationships, all are affected daily by the universe. Now, those who say to me they don't believe in astrology, my answer would be, well, have you studied it? Also, I feel that, you can't expect everyone to understand. But the universe is such a big place. So this week, yes, as you just mentioned, we have what's called a grand trine. That means 3 big planets are in a triangle. Namely, we have Venus, Mars, and Saturn, all in the signs of 3 water signs. We have Mars in Cancer, Venus in Scorpio, which is lovely, I hasten to add, especially for you, Deb, and we have Saturn in Pisces. Put the 3 together, which forms a triangle basically in the universe. You're going to get storms and you're going to get a lot of water. Well, I think certainly the UK has had an awful lot of water. Florida right now are really sadly having terrible storms. But on a personal level, this is a time for really doing some deep soul searching. Even if you are totally someone who doesn't even think about this kind of thing, in a few weeks' time, you'll sort of look back and think, well, actually, yeah, I suppose that did coincide with a bit of change. We're all being made very aware of, the world at the moment. There is so much going on. Sadly, there is conflict, and then, of course, there are these hurricanes. And that's also to do with the planet Pluto, which I'll go to a bit later, because Pluto is quite important. But this grand trine that we have this week is now joined by Jupiter going backwards. So in sort of plain speaking, let's just say these 3 water sign planets are 3 dogs in a park, okay? Let's just say we have a Rottweiler, an Alsatian and a Labrador, and they're all off the lead and they all meet in the park. They're all three individual, beautiful dogs with their own individual personalities. If you imagine those three breeds of dogs coming together in a park, off the lead, without their owners, well, there's going to be a little bit of chaos. There's going to be one of them wanting to be dominant. One of them wants to show off. The other just wants to play. Usually it's the Labrador that wants to play. The Rottweiler and the Alsatian usually probably playing the dominant role. So with those grand trine at the moment in water signs do like to be a bit in charge, we have to say. Anybody born under the sign of Pisces, Cancer or Scorpio are lovely people, truly lovely people, sensitive souls and very caring, but they do like to be a little bit in charge, and they don't like to have people perhaps telling them or interfering. They like advice, but then they'll go and do their own. Don't know whether you're quite like that, Deb, but on the other hand, I think most people like to think, well, what's the advice? What would I say? What would I advise astrologically? And then they'll go off and make their own decision, which we should all make our own decisions, but it's good to have a little bit of background, advice as well. So that grand trine, just imagine those three dogs in the park causing a little bit of chaos. One dog will shine through, and that's probably going to be Venus. So Venus in Scorpio is the Labrador. So you're a Labrador, Deb, today. So you are going to calm down. Mars in Cancer and Saturn in Pisces. You're going to say, let's all join together. Let's stop this fight. Let's think about this. And it's better to be friends. So even with people right now, if they're seeing a bit soul searching, if they're not quite sure about a relationship, and of course, relationships are not just intimate relationships. They are all across the board with work, family, neighbours, whatever. If you're having a little bit of conflict somewhere or you're feeling a bit uncertain, then this week in particular, this grand trine is encouraging you to say, hang on, let's think about this. Let's be friends. Let's not have conflict. That's not going to solve anything. Let's talk this through. This grand trine is going to be around for a couple of weeks or so, but it's more prominent today, which is why we chose today to chat, and that's a really, really good day. In addition to this, along comes Jupiter, which is also the planet that we all really, really like, because Jupiter is the planet that is expansion, luck, money, love, well-being. So Jupiter and Venus together are just what we all like. They are the ingredients that make the absolute perfect cake of life. So Venus in Scorpio is joined by Jupiter in Gemini. The communications go well. But Jupiter today has literally turned retrograde. Now, I just want to clarify something on this point about retrograde planets. Most people will text me quite panically saying, oh my goodness, Jupiter's going retrograde or Saturn's going retrograde. Is this going to be bad? I just want to stress that astrology isn't bad. And actually, my job is to be a positive astrologer, to help you get the best out of the trends and things in your chart, not to actually encourage you to sit there scared to go out in case, the piano is going to fall on your foot, because that's not what it's all about. It's to get the best out of you, your life, your relationship, and your current situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I noticed that...
Does that make sense to you, Deb, about how things...
Sorry, I'll clap here. Sorry, say that again. Did that make sense? Can
you
hear me?
Yeah. Does that make sense, that the astrology is trying to help you to get the best out of your current situations?
Yes. You do me an astrological forecast every year that highlights
it's coming up soon.
the points of my life. As I said, it was my favourite Christmas present.
Get me ordering soon.
And it's a good reference point to the year when things are happening to me to refer back to, so that I can get the most of them. It helps you to focus in on things.
Yeah. So I think probably in the last time we chatted, I probably explained about what the birth chart is. But for those who didn't listen to us last time, I'll just recap that a birth chart is taken from the very moment of your arrival onto Earth, the minute you are born. And when people ask me if the time of birth is important, well, it is really, because that is your actual blueprint of the chart from the moment you're born. Now, it's made up of your ascendant and all the other planets in the solar system, where they are at the point of your birth. And that's why I work on an equal house system. So you have like 12 houses in a clock. It's a bit, imagine a clock face, put it into 12 sections. So your point of birth at the time of birth is actually on the ascendant. That becomes your first house. And then yours happened to be Leo. At the hour that you were born, the ascendant was moving through the east on the sign of Leo. So that became your rising sign or your ascendant. And then you draw the rest of the houses the way through that. So when I'm doing a horoscope, or when I'm looking at somebody's trends now, you look at the natal chart, which is the natal chart on the day you're born, and you compare it to where the planets are now. So for you, and anybody else who has Scorpio, Cancer, or Pisces quite prominent in their chart, this is a very significant time as we come towards the end of 2024. The Grand Trine is encouraging you to really think, where am I going? Is this what I want to do? Is this the person I want to be with? How can I improve this? And Jupiter in Gemini, slightly turning retrograde, is also saying, well, let's just pause before you make that final decision, before you press send on the button. Let's make sure that you're actually getting it correct. Now, I know people listening to this are going to say, what about me? I'm a Taurus. What about me? I'm a Sagittarius. Yeah, of course, depending on where you are in your chart, then yes, this Grand Trine will affect you. But it is the turn of Scorpio, Pisces, and Cancer to have a little bit more influence from the Grand Trine than the other signs. But everyone will feel this effect.
So how can this Grand Trine be if it's a water? They're all water signs.
Yeah,
So let's it is obviously quite powerful.
very.
In reference to the hurricane, why are they not air signs? So I know
Yeah,
there's going to be I know there's flooding, but what's stimulating the wind?
I think that's Pluto and Uranus, which are two other mighty big planets that I will get to in a second. But also staying on the Grand Trine for poor Florida that is being flattened. Yeah, it is mainly the wind, but there is going to be rain, flooding, devastation. Scorpio is the sign of rebirth. Saturn in Pisces is bringing things to an end and new chapters. So sadly, Florida won't be the same. It will be rebuilt, it will live on, but it won't be the same. And even more greater tragedy is that some people will lose their lives. So it is rebirth, regeneration, and Mars in Cancer. Cancer is a very passive sign. Cancer doesn't like conflict or storms or war or strife. But if you really, really upset a crab, then they'll sting you. And they can come under the sand and sting you quite deeply, really, in a way that perhaps you didn't expect. So I think the Grand Trine, together with the positions of where Pluto and Saturn are, is what's causing devastation, particularly in Florida and certain areas of conflict in the world, like Ukraine and the Middle East, of course, which is constant. But in Western Europe, we are more concerned of our daily lives, of costs, fuel prices, cost of living, things like that. But I want everyone to actually to realise the Grand Trine is lucky, because I smile, but I also get exasperated that nearly every day I will have a message from someone saying, is this bad? No, it isn't bad. It's how you deal with it, really. Yes, it's pretty bad if you're right in the middle of Florida right now, but on the average daily person over here, it isn't bad. So I think the universe is always more powerful than any of us, and that is something that we do have to recognise and respect, really. Don't argue with the universe.
Go with it. Go with the flow.
Yeah, absolutely. Go with it and handle it the best you can. it's very simple language to explain three dogs in a park, but I think that is a very, very good analogy. And if you're coming along and you meet those three dogs in the park, and one is quite perhaps a little bit aggressive, and the other is all over you like the licking Labrador, it's how you deal with it at that moment, isn't it? You know, fight or flight. Would you go and tackle that dog? Would you go and try and help them? Would you try and calm them? Would you run away? Or it's how you deal with it in a situation. That's how I would class this week and the Grand Trine. Also, you talk about the wind. Well, that's usually affected by the moon. Now, it's also important to add here that we're right in the middle of eclipse season. The moon is getting closer to the Earth every time. This is why we have supermoons, we have blue moons, we have people are saying, wow, did you see that moon last night? At the moment, you won't see it because it's all very, very stormy. But a couple of weeks ago, there was a really, really bright moon. I expect you had it where you are. We're coming up to another one on the 17th. So about another week's time, we have another supermoon. That brings wind. So it's creating the storms. October is always storm season. It's stormy season for the stock markets, for financial situations. The great financial crash in September, October 2009. It's very, very to do with trends and cycles of where the planets form at this time of year.
And how can the astrology influence or affect the political scene? You know, obviously there's a big election coming up in America. What are the planets saying about what's ahead?
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting question. So let's talk a little bit about Pluto, because Pluto will be affecting America. Now, I think we touched possibly slightly on Pluto last time, but let me recap. Pluto is a generation planet. It's a huge influence. It's a small planet. It's a dwarf. It's about 4.5 to 5 billion kilometers away from Earth, and yet it has a very, very mighty effect on us. It has the power to completely change the world, the climate change, influence, politics. Once again, people fear Pluto. I think I really want to get across with today's chat that please do not fear astrology. Please do not spend all your time on whoever you are saying, oh, Saturn's coming and Pluto's coming, oh, Jupiter's gone. It's not like that. It's just helping and being aware of storms coming is how you're going to cope with it. Now, America, interestingly enough, became very much into its own about 270 odd years ago, coinciding about the same time as the French Revolution, when Pluto was in Aquarius. Now, we mentioned this last time. Pluto, at the moment, is hovering between Capricorn and Aquarius. Capricorn is an earth sign, Aquarius is an air sign. So that answers your question a little bit about the wind, the storms, the winds of change. So at the moment, it's really hovering. It's not parked. Okay, so try and imagine this huge planet bobbing around in the universe, deciding where to park. At the moment today, it's back in Capricorn, but it's having its final fling. It's saying goodbye to Capricorn. And very soon, in another month or so, it goes into Aquarius and it stays there until 2044. And it's going to have a huge impact on the world. Yes, the superpowers, America, Russia, obviously we're ruled by technology. We're going to be run a lot more by science and technology. So bringing it back to American elections, because people often ask me, who's going to win the election then? Same as they did in Britain or in France or wherever there's an election. I think I would then have to look at the individual charts of the candidates that are standing. Now, we know whether you like President Trump or not, we're not discussing that on this kind of podcast, but he is a relevant person. Biden is Scorpio and he is just ending his chapter. He's closing that part of him. The Grand Trine was coming up to end his office, shut him down. Okay. Trump has a lot of planets in his chart, including Leo, that's still going to be very, very prominent in the next few years. So whether you love him, hate him, agree with him, disagree, whatever you want to do, he's not going to be quiet. Okay, he's going to be a very significant person. Now, when Pluto finally parks in Aquarius in about a month or so and stays there for the next 20 odd years, it's not necessarily warmongering. I know that's what everybody's worried about, and I do know there are some awful conflicts in the world right now, and it is quite heartbreaking to see what's going on, human life and suffering. But Pluto in Aquarius is very, very humanitarian. It's philanthropic. It's save the world, save the planet. It's let's talk about this. It's communications. It's science. It's technology. So I feel conflicts. There'll always be conflict because I'm afraid that is human nature and the way of the world. But I feel it will be dealt with on a very, very different level, different approach, different attitudes. And yes, America is going to go into a whole new chapter like they did 277 years ago. And so is Europe, because it was the French Revolution. It was all about storming of the Bastille, and that's sort of coming round again in a very modern way. I don't think we'll be chopping people's heads off and storming up towards the Champs-Élysées in Paris, but we're going back in a revolution in a different way. People work from home now. You work from home. I work from home. Life has changed. Life has changed since COVID. That was all very Capricorn influence. Pluto in Capricorn rules medicine, the NHS, all kinds of things like that, which is why the last couple of years it's all been very, very turbulent in those kind of organisations. It's going through its own revolution. So Pluto in Aquarius, please, it's not to be feared. It's to be embraced. It's to be welcomed. It can be fun. There's going to be some wacky things with Pluto in Aquarius. Even now, we have very much neutral gender. We have all kinds of influences. People wear what they want to wear. All this kind of stuff. We haven't seen anything yet until Pluto really takes over in Aquarius. It's going to be quite wacky. Not to be feared, though.
I noticed that the influences that come in my work come in groups, and so that must have an influence on the type of client or the type of work that wants to come in. I'm having a huge influx of male clients coming in. Probably most of my client list is male, and that's an unusual thing. So it feels like the men are making a shift. The moon can affect clients that come with very high emotion, and I can get specific kinds of issues, whether it's to do with their business or their relationship with their children, and I'm sure that there's an astrological, or there will be an astrological influence in that.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm a bit the same. Whatever the planets are, particularly Saturn. I know a couple of times, a couple of questions I had last time, people said, "Oh, could you explain a little bit more about Saturn?" So let me just explain about Saturn. This is basically in plain language. Saturn is the head teacher. So you're called into the office, and the head teacher is saying to you, "Okay, you're doing quite well, but you could do a bit more," or you need to sort of focus a little bit more on what you're doing, or you need to go back to the drawing board. Again, please do not fear Saturn. There's always this irrational, "Oh, I've got Saturn in my chart. Oh, that's going to be awful." Not necessarily. It depends which area of the house system that I said that it will fall into. So, and the area of the house that it comes into will be the area that's perhaps you're focusing more on career. Interesting you say about males, and I will mention that in a minute. But I think I always say in my work, when Saturn goes into Pisces, I will have an awful lot of Pisces clients or people with a Pisces moon. When Pluto goes into Aquarius, I'll have a lot of Aquarian clients, or Pluto, wherever it is, if it's their moon, their ascendant. So Pluto is going to affect you, Deb, because it's opposing your ascendant. It's in your relationship, partnerships house. Now, that can also be career. We all, of course, think a relationship means, Mr. Darcy, but or miswrite, but it is also partnerships in career. And I think at your stage of life and stage of career, where the planets are and Pluto and Saturn, yes, you probably are going to be welcoming a lot more male clients into your workforce, which is great. And also, men now, with the way the planets are, they're more sensitive. Because one generational influence that's going on over a whole generation, children born now are going to be very in tune. They're very knowing. They're going to grow up with a really strong sense of sixth sense, of vision. Pluto in Aquarius is vision, it's very visionary. So men now are not quite so scared of opening up. They are more willing to take on counselling or therapy or some kind of self-help group, or look at their horoscopes. I laugh actually because there's a lot of secret men who surf on my Facebook looking at their horoscopes. They don't always like admitting it, but I know they have, because they'll come out with something 2 or 3 months later, and I think, you read that then, did you? But they don't always like to admit it. But yeah, it's good that men are now more in tune with their feelings. So you are going to have a lot more work in that respect, which is good.
And it's timely of business connections, new business relationships, because that's just come into my life too. So there's a new business venture on the horizon here. So yeah, timing's good.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I mean, you certainly deserve it. But for all Leos and Aquarius in general, just on a general level, if you have a lot of Leo or Aquarius prominent in your chart, so i.e. Sun, Ascendant, Moon, then yeah, you are going to see some big changes over the next couple of years. But I really do want to emphasize to anyone listening to this, honestly, it's not bad. Nobody can have a perfect life, sadly. Nobody can have 365 days without some kind of problem. I mean, look at the royal family. They're very Leo dominated in their charts. All of the royal family, King Charles and all of those around him, will have quite strong Leo planets floating around. Even though King Charles is a Scorpio, as you are, but he too has a very strong Leo aspect in his chart, as you do. So it's all changed for him. It's changed how the establishment's going to be. The royal family have been through some quite tough times this year. Whether you like them or hate them, they've been through some difficulties with several members of the family being unwell. So yeah, it's a huge change, but I do want to keep saying, look, it's to be embraced, and it's how you take on this change. So for you, business partnerships, opportunities, brilliant. So yeah, I will be about to do your yearly horoscope, but I think I'll say to you now, sign on the dotted line, Deb. Absolutely, please do.
Yeah, it's exciting. And I think that anything that comes up in life, like relationship issues or high emotions or illness or world events, although they can be devastating and uncomfortable at the time, are all for the good.
Well, yes, sadly. I mean, if predictions are often about history. Now, I know that's a real contradiction, but it is. The astrological trends are also based on facts from before, because it's all very cyclical. It's how it goes round. So all of the planets, the big planets, Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, they are all very, very big generation influences. So when Pluto was in Aquarius back in the 1700s, the men all wore white wigs with talcum powder, and they wore those sort of the white breeches, the jackets, which still applies in some of our state processions in the royalty and also in courts. Judges still wear these white wigs all the time. Well, they started in Pluto and Aquarius back in the 1700s. So life for us now is nothing like the 1700s, but it's a similar kind of change that's going to go and happen. And sadly, with death and devastation and flood, I mean, nobody wants that. Nobody wants Florida to be flattened. But yeah, it does bring new generation and new rebirth, because unfortunately that's what life and the planet is all about, really, isn't it?
Yes, it's all about change and avoiding stagnancy, isn't it? We have to keep evolving.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is a terribly devastating time. It's really caught me this time. I've been very caught up in the emotion of it. I've felt very energetically connected to the people. I've been waking up in the nights, and wanting to check how it's going, and I'm really feeling it.
Well, because you are very much that way, and that's how you are, and you are an empath. And this is why, we both laughed yesterday. We both sort of said, is it time? Should we do it this week? Couldn't be a better opportunity. And we both happened to be available. And it's really strange because a couple of times I thought today I was not, for some reason, I thought, maybe today's going to work out. But then again, the planets kicked in, and it was all okay. And it was an opportunity time for you and I to get together. But people are feeling the energies. And that's something else. We are more open to it now, which is why men, going back to men, as well as women, are more willing to open up. It's not such a taboo subject like it used to be. In our parents' generation, you didn't really talk about death. You didn't talk about losing childbirth, for instance. Women would have a stillborn child or miscarriage or something. They didn't tell their families. It was a taboo subject. And it was one of those things. It was nature, and women just had to grin and bear it and get on with it. Now it's much more open, and there's lots of groups and therapies and help and professionals as well as family and friends going around with flowers and lighting a candle. So it is all much more open, and I think this is how the world is changing. But unfortunately, there does have to be some conflict and war and devastation at times, which is very, very sad.
So if as we're feeling the planets all the time, and I suppose one of the, for people who are not really into astrology, one of the common things is, oh, it's full moon, howling at the wind, howling at the moon. What advice could you give people on how they can approach in their relationships or in themselves as they're approaching a full moon?
Simple. Don't press send. Because again, in a modern day world, we have so much technology at our hands, and we're not ever parted from our iPhones and our iPads and our laptops and everything else. And the full moon, because the body is made up of a huge percentage of water, and the tides of the moon is closer to Earth, the tides. If I'm going to travel abroad, I check the moon to see, especially if I'm going by sea, but even if I'm going by plane, I check the full moon, the new moon, the moon cycle, just to see what kind of journey I'm going to have. The emergency services will absolutely agree with any astrologer that when there is coming up to a full moon, the police, the ambulance, all of these people, they're on full alert. It's called, sadly, people used to be called lunatics. It's the lunar tick. It sends people off the edge. So because your emotions are so much more heightened and your sensitivity just before and during the full moon, people will lose their temper, or they'll get upset, or they want to really lash out, or they want to do something a bit silly. Sadly, there may be a tendency to be a greater temptation for suicide near a full moon. But even on a day-to-day level, this is what I say to people: don't press send. Because we all start sending very angry text messages or a very, very shirty email. And, we press send in our anxiety, in our upset, especially relationships. Women do this even more so than men. They will send a text to a partner or a friend or something like that. And then the next day they wake up and think, oh, did I really press send? And it's too late then. So how to prepare yourself for a full moon? Well, look after your well-being, stay calm, don't drink too much alcohol, or any kind of substance that's going to set you off. Do some mindfulness, really. Just go for a walk, do some swimming, go for a spa, have a bath, eat some good food, get some sleep. Basically try and calm yourself. And don't communicate too much. If you've got a really important decision to make with a partner or boss or someone, don't do it on a full moon. Wait until it's waned a few days later, when it starts, as the moon wanes and before it waxes again, all this kind of stuff. because it all goes wrong on a full moon. Don't even have your hair cut on a full moon. Because it could go wrong. You could come back and think, that's not how I want my haircut. And then you go and send an angry message to your hairdresser, but actually it's probably not their fault. It's just the influence and how you felt at the time of the full moon. Lots and lots of advice about the full moon. Oh, don't worry, I always check. I'm going to go to the hairdressers this week. Oh yeah, well I'm going to the hairdressers. I checked, it's going to be the right colour of win. I had a conversation with a dentist once about I had to go and make an appointment and it had to be on a full moon, so I changed it. And when I got to see him, he was like, oh, because he knew me quite well. He said, what's all this about? Why don't you change your appointment because it's a full moon? And I told him. Now, he was a very, very good dentist. He did a lot of repair work in a mental hospital. If your face has been smashed up or burnt up or anything like that, he did very good cosmetic work for teeth. I was just going for the average checkup. But anyway, I explained to him about how you can bleed more on a full moon, how you can feel more pain on a full moon. And he was like, yeah, don't believe that. Anyway, a couple of weeks later, he actually phoned me and he said, okay, I apologise. Right, you're right, as always, you're always right. And he said one of the worst experiences of his life with a dental operation took place. And then when he realised afterwards, it was on a full moon. And the poor patient had a severe reaction. Bleeding was profuse. Yep, they lived. They were fine. He sorted it all out. But it was scary. And he said, okay, I won't do that kind of major dental surgery on a full moon if the patient, because again, it depends on it might have been that patient's full moon or his full moon. Do you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. And of course, farmers, anybody you ask, anybody who's connecting with nature, if they're lambing, if they're calving, if they're out with horses, they will say the difference with a full moon. So the next one we've got coming up is Aries. Now that's going to be in fire. So do not press send. Absolutely keep stum around a full moon in Aries, because it's very tempting to be a bit volatile, to let rip of someone, or to make your feelings quite forcibly known. And I'm sure there will be one or two political things coming to a head with the full moon in Aries, which is around the 17th, Deb. But then after that, then you can reopen the communications again.
Very interesting. So what's really appealing to me is the way that you put out your social media on astrology, and it's really informative, and you keep us all up to date with where the planets are and how they're interacting and what we can expect. And every Sunday you put out a forecast or a horoscope for each sign, which I have to say I always look at. And from the last session we did, you also talked about people not quite agreeing with their sun sign, but you said, well, have a look at what your ascendant is or what your moon sign is. So I've started looking at my Leo and my Taurus as well, and that actually really helped because it gave me a bigger picture. So how can people get in touch with you to join your Facebook page?
If you search on Facebook, I'm called Stephanie Life Guide, one word, LIFEGUIDE, not guard as in swimming, but life guide, guiding you through life. And then on the page is Astral Guidance. And I'm really pleased that my Astral Guidance is growing. I have more and more followers. I'm really appreciative to people who share it around, and then people join me. I am quite global now. I have clients all around the world, which is lovely, and I really appreciate that. But yes, always consider your rising sign and your moon, particularly when it comes to relationships. That's your moon sign, because that's your emotions, that's your heart, that's your marriage or your partnership or your children. So always read your moon sign. And of course, for you have your moon in Taurus, so you have Uranus still very, very much floating around, bringing the winds of change. But I will continue to do my horoscopes, and I am very flattered about how many followers I have. It's lovely.
So if people want to get in touch with you, they can connect through Facebook and Instagram as well?
Facebook. And they can leave a message on Astral Guidance, which people do. And they can go through Astral Guidance onto Messenger. and then they can contact me direct, which many of them do.
Yeah. And another great service you do is the astrological forecast for the next 12 months to help you to expect what's ahead, what to look out for, what to work with. Yeah. I
Yep.
loved my last one.
Yes, I do, and thank you for mentioning that. But particularly, I mean, every year is important. Of course, it is. Every year has its individual planetary transitions that are going to be more applicable to someone than others. But 2025, in general, is a more upbeat year for the world because Saturn will finally come out of Pisces, going into Aries. Pluto goes into Aquarius. It's going to be upbeat. It really is. So I really urge people not to dwell on the fear that the world's going to end and it's all going to be a world war. There's always going to be some conflict, but it could be surprising how some of that is resolved in a very quick and unusual way, but a very altruistic way. So please hang on to that.
Yeah. Well, I think this kind of podcast is really helpful. It gives another influence into relationships. So I'd like to make a suggestion to our listeners that if any of you have any questions for Stephanie regarding your relationships or your life and would like an astrological slant on, you can send to Stephanie or you can send to me. And at the end of the podcast, I give out my contact details and we can work with them on air. And maybe we could do some, answer some questions. If any of you've got any suggestions of how you would like to learn about astrology around your life and your relationships, then please send the suggestions our way, and that we can then add it to our next episode.
I think that's actually brilliant, Deb, and we'll end up having the Steph and Deb chat show every week.
We could have another business adventure.
Yeah, but yeah, please send your questions. I think you might be busy answering some of those, Deb. But no,
anyway,
thank you. It's been lovely to do this yet again.
Yeah, well, it was an easy, very impromptu one, but it's worked beautifully, very timely, and as always, incredibly interesting. So thank you for your time, and I'll catch you on the next episode.
You will. Thanks a lot, Deb.
Okay,
Bye.
take care.
Bye. Bye for now. Right. Can we talk now?